The glass of champagne hung in the air when a strange voice came from my microphone in the hall. The money from the Veras Foundation did not reach the hospital. It's settled in accounts associated with Mr. Orlick. I was called by my last name, as if a brand had been placed on me, and 100 cameras instantly turned to me, like a predator who had suddenly become prey. Before I could blink, the host of the show, still smiling, leaned over and whispered too loudly for the others to hear, "Are you ready to answer?" Live. I felt my tie turn into a rope and the floor into ice cracking under my feet. I was taught not to be afraid of guests, not to be afraid of the market, not to be afraid of losses. But no one taught me shame, and now it had crawled under my skin, cutting me alive, turning me into a mannequin trying to speak with a human voice. Report error. We'll fix it, I said as if I had time to spare, while the screen behind me flashed with numbers, dates, transactions, the names of the gasket companies in which I recognized my own initials, laid out like physical evidence. The partners' hands, which had only yesterday grabbed my shoulders as their profit, now slid cautiously out of their jackets, as if afraid of getting dirty. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and for a moment I hid behind it like a shield. The message was short and hit my chest harder than any report. "I'm sorry." I revealed the scheme to them. Better some pain now than a catastrophe later. M. I reread it once, twice, 3 times, until I realized that M was my brother, the one to whom I had entrusted the keys to the orphanage inside me. The voices in the hall mixed into a hum that reminded me of the sound of a city without electricity, not silence, but a vacuum, where the word treason resonates like metal. Did you steal? No. Did you know? No. Do you control your companies? Yes. Every yes and no squeezed my throat, forced me to look into the lens that saw more than I wanted to show. The assistant, pale as an unsigned bill, placed an envelope on the podium, an official notice of an unscheduled audit and temporary suspension from management. I didn't touch it. It seemed to me that the paper would burn my fingers and leave a mark that nothing could remove. Why did you do that? I typed a reply to my brother, but didn't send it. I held the phone like the hand of a person who had already let go. Someone in the room laughed, short, nervous, human, and that laugh broke something flat, stocky, rehearsed in me. I looked up and saw my own name on the newsfeed, next to the words investigation, laundering, fraud. And for the first time in years, I admitted out loud, not to the media, but to myself, I don't know what step to take next, and I'm not sure the next floor will hold my weight. The next morning, my house looked like a battlefield after a surrender. The phones rang nonstop, the lawyers waited downstairs, and I looked at my reflection in the mirror, without a suit, without a role, without armor. The mirror didn't lie, it showed a person who had lost not money, but his voice. When you're called a thief, you can still fight. But when you're called a liar, you no longer have anyone to prove the truth, because everyone has decided for you. I went down to the kitchen, where the TV was already broadcasting my downfall. The host was telling me how I laundered millions, showing videos of my houses and yachts, and adding, all this on the blood of ordinary people. I turned off the sound, but his voice rang in my head even without the speakers. The assistant brought the documents, the seizure of part of the assets, the demand to transfer the management of the fund to the supervisory board. She looked at me like a doctor looks at a patient who doesn't know that he is already doomed. You need to disappear for a while, she said quietly. At least a week. Everything will settle down. This is not a virus, Katia. This is hunting. And who is the hunter? My brother, I answered, without looking at her. It seemed to me that I could still control the course of events, until the lawyer called and said, "Your brother signed an agreement with the investigation. He testifies that all the transfers were at your direction." The world narrowed down to one phrase. Testifies. Against me. Against blood. Against childhood, where he and I shared one loaf and dreamed that one day no one would be with us the way they once were with us, ruthless and hungry. After that call, I left the city. In the trunk only documents, a laptop and a bottle of whiskey that I had saved for victory. I thought I was losing only my business, but it turned out that I was losing the story in which I believed. I was declared a suspect in financial fraud, journalists were on duty outside my cottage, and my former partners distanced themselves so quickly, as if they were afraid of being infected by my name. I sat in an old motel by the highway, listening to the noise of cars outside the window, and thinking about him. About Mark. We had always been different. I was intelligent, he was heartless. I saw the goal, he saw people. And now, it seemed, he had chosen people instead of me. I couldn't hate him, but I couldn't forgive him either. The news showed a short story. Mark was leaving the prosecutor's office, with guards nearby, documents in his hands, and the same confidence on his face that I once called brotherhood. He has become their hero, I thought. And I was their enemy. And then I felt for the first time that this world was not just unfair. It had its own logic, where truth was a currency that could be bought or sold. That night I realized, if you want to survive, you have to become what you were made to be. And in the morning I opened my laptop, logged into the Foundation's internal servers, where the old records were still stored, and began to look not for excuses but for proof that my brother was no angel. That maybe we were both just different faces of the same lie. For the third night in a row I didn't sleep. My fingers ached from the keyboard, my eyes hurt from the monitor light. I scrolled through terabytes of data, bank statements, internal correspondence, looking for at least some trace, not for justification, but for understanding. And then, among the archives that should have been destroyed long ago, I came across a strange file called Phoenix Docs. It contained neither numbers nor reports, but a letter from an unknown author. The signature, M, wrote to me that he was afraid of you. But not because of the money. Because you have become the person we once hated. I reread these lines, not understanding who wrote them. The letter was dated several months before the scandal. The text continued short but cold. I will help him get out. You won't understand now, but you will thank me later. And the signature was O. This name hit me harder than the betrayal. Alina. The only woman I ever let see me without a mask. She left me 3 years ago, saying she couldn't stand living next to someone who turned trust into a deal. I laughed then, but now the laughter has become a knife that has come back to haunt me. I looked for her address, and when I found it, I stood for a long time in the rain in front of her apartment door, not daring to ring the bell. She opened it herself, as if she had been waiting. "You're late," she said without surprise. "I thought you'd never dare." "Do you work with him?" "I'm saving what's left of both of you." She invited me inside. The room smelled of coffee and cold. That's the smell of the truth that can no longer be postponed. On the table were copies of documents, the same ones that had been leaked to the media. She pointed to one of them. "Look carefully at the accountant's signature. It's not Mark. It's a fake." "Are you saying he's innocent?" "I mean you were both used. And if you don't figure out who's behind this, you'll be wiped out like unnecessary players." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with alarm. She handed me the flash drive. "Here's what I found. It's correspondence between the fund's investors and a group of people from the ministry. You'll see familiar names. But don't be silly, Igor. You always thought you could beat the system. But this time it's playing you." I returned to the motel, already on the verge of hysterics. The flash drive did have letters explaining everything. The scandal didn't start by accident. It was started by those who wanted to get rid of me because I was getting in the way of a new scheme, a bigger, dirtier fund controlled by government people. My brother simply became a victim with a clean face, and Alina must have tried to pull him out of the trap when it was already too late. I sat and stared at the monitor while dawn broke outside. The rain beat against the window, and in every drop I heard the same question that tore inside: how far am I willing to go to get back not money, but the truth? That morning I realized, to survive, it was not enough to prove my innocence. I had to show who was really guilty. And if the truth became a weapon, I would pull the trigger without hesitation. The next day I dialed the number of the person who had once betrayed me the most. And I knew you would call. "Let's talk about a deal." He was waiting for me at the restaurant where we had once celebrated our first million. The same place, only now instead of music there was the whispering of security guards, instead of toasts there was a cold table between us. Mark had arrived without a tie, but with the same confidence that had once made people trust him more than me. He smiled as if this was all a misunderstanding, a family quarrel that could be settled with coffee. I sat down opposite him and for the first time in years felt my fingers shaking. "You sold me out," I said. "I saved myself," he replied. "And maybe you too." "A lie. The truth you don't want to hear." He leaned closer. "They came to me before the scandal. They said the fund needed to be cleaned up, that you were superfluous. I thought if I agreed to cooperate, they would simply fire you, without a trial, without bloodshed. But when everything got out of control, it was too late." "And you decided to become a hero on TV?" "I decided not to be you." I looked into his eyes, and at that moment I realized, we really stopped being brothers long before today. We were just playing different roles in the same play. I was the messiah of business, he was the conscience of the family. And now the audience was applauding him. But the finale had not yet come. I put the flash drive in front of him. "That's who's behind all this. They used both of us. If you want the truth, take it. If you want money, burn it. But know this, if I go, I'll go to the end." He was silent. His gaze became empty, like that of a man who has finally seen his own shadow. "They won't let you come back, Igor. They'll erase you. Then I'll make sure that at least the memory of them burns with me." I stood up. As I was leaving, he said quietly, almost in a whisper, "If you go to the media, they will kill you. If I remain silent, I will kill myself, only more slowly." The next day, I handed over the materials to a journalist who had once tried to destroy me. And I did it deliberately. Because only enemies tell the truth without mercy. Her eyes shone with excitement, the smell of a great story. "Do you understand that you are signing your own sentence?" she asked. "I understand that silence is also deadly." After the meeting, I left the city. The night highway, black as ink, swallowed the headlights. The phone vibrated in my pocket, dozens of calls, unknown numbers. I did not answer. A bomb was already starting to explode in the news. The names of ministers, investors, bankers. Everything that was untouchable became headlines. I stopped the car on the bridge and stepped out into the cold wind. The dark water roared below. For the first time in months, I felt silence. It wasn't peace, it was a sentence. But there was something pure about it. The world hadn't changed. One of its myths had simply collapsed, my myth. And now I stood over the abyss, knowing either I would jump into the truth or fall back into a lie. I took out my phone, pressed call and heard her voice, Elena's. "It all began," she said. "And it will all end," I answered. "Tonight." I pressed end call and returned to the car. The flashing lights in the rearview mirror were flashing. The world was already following me. But this time I wasn't running. This time I was waiting for them. I was arrested without a sound. Without handcuffs, without cameras. Quietly, coldly, as if they were taking away not a person, but an empty shell left after a storm. At the station, they didn't ask me any questions, they already knew all the answers. And yet I saw confusion in their eyes. It's not every day that they catch someone who planted dynamite under their own empire. After 3 days of interrogation, I was released on bail. The investigation was supposed to find out what I had really done, whether it was a crime or an attempt at redemption. But it didn't matter anymore. I knew that I had won not in court, but in myself. When you live in a lie for a long time, the truth doesn't set you free, it tears, it burns, but only through this pain is something alive born. I went to the old dacha where Mark and I used to fish. It smelled of pine, earth, and the past. The phone was silent. I opened the news. A wave of scandals was washing away those who had considered themselves untouchable only yesterday. Ministers were resigning, businesses were closing, accounts were being frozen. And among all these headlines, in small print, between the lines, was my brother's name. Disappeared. Whereabouts unknown. I stared at that sentence for a long time. I wanted anger, I didn't feel it. I wanted joy, I didn't either. Only silence. Maybe he had run away. Maybe he had been removed. Maybe he had finally realized that the truth never wins. That evening I lit the fireplace, opened the notebook I found in the closet, and began to write. Not a report, not a book, not an apology, a letter. If someone ever asks why I did it, tell them it wasn't for money, it wasn't for fame. I just couldn't keep quiet anymore. Because silence is also a form of crime. And if someone says I destroyed myself, let them. It's better to be a ruin than a monument to lies. When I finished writing, it was already dawn outside the window. The air smelled of damp grass. A thunderstorm rumbled somewhere far away, like a shot that didn't reach. I went outside, watched the sky slowly break into pieces of light. And for the first time in years I felt that I could breathe without fear. The phone lit up with a message, an unknown number. You did the right thing. But remember, the truth without love also kills. Oh. I smiled. Because I realized that even those who left leave a piece of themselves in us. We are all fragments of something greater that was once pure. And maybe true wealth isn't about bills, influence, or status. It's about being human even when you've been stripped to the bone. I watched the sun touch the water and thought. I lost everything to finally realize that I had lost nothing important. The world was silent, but for the first time, honestly.